Since 1973, Tattoo Charlie's has been an established body modification studio in Kentucky, featuring world-renowned artists and piercers, currently with locations on Preston Highway and in Lexington, a staple point in the tattoo community. Learn more at tattoocharlies.com. Set up your appointment today at 7904 Preston Highway. Our tattoos are done while you wait.
Hey, it's Jeff McNichol down here at Mom's Music, 1900 Melwood Avenue. I was just thinking, when I was a kid, the magic was at Frankfort Avenue, the Mom's Music at Frankfort Avenue, and I used to beg people to get a ride down there just to hang out with the guys and see all the cool gear. Now that I'm the owner of this store, it's like a dream come true. We're recreating the magic with the vibe that we used to have at the old store. We're carrying all the gear that you're going to possibly want. We're giving you the outstanding service and personal attention that you deserve. Yeah, so we've got the great guitar shop here. We're carrying USA Fender, USA Gibson, Paul Reed Smith, Gretsch, Jackson, Charvel, anything you could possibly want, we're going to have it for you. Mom's is, and always will be, Louisville's music store.
Hey, it's Mark Maxwell at Maxwell's House of Music. Listen, all this stuff is now available to purchase on our website. Check it out at maxwellshouseofmusic.com.
We carry all the top brands, like Fender.
We got Gibson.
We also have basses.
We've got ukuleles.
We got drums.
We've got sound gear.
We've got keyboards.
Thank you for tuning into the Metal Forge. I am Mark Jackson and I'm your host. The premise of the show is pretty simple. Awesome interviews and awesome music. If you want to contact me, hit me up at metalforgeradio@gmail.com or visit the website metalforgeradio.com. And now let's get this show on the road. What's going on, Metalheads? Thank you all for tuning in to the special Metal Forge bonus edition with my guest, Steve Gatrost. This was recorded here last weekend, and I just bumped the volume up, cut out a little bit of dead air, and it's just a conversation between me and Steve. Steve is a local tattoo artist who's also done a comic book called The Elixir. He works at Spring Street Tattoo in Jeffersonville, Indiana. Links will be listed below. Dude is awesome. I met him at a artist appreciation day at the Great Escape on Bardstown Road in Louisville, Kentucky, back about a year or so ago. And I picked up a copy of his book, and it's completely great. We talk about it in the interview, so I'm going to keep this short. Hope you like it. Like I said, this is just as a bonus for you guys for listening to the show. And I appreciate it. And thank you all so much. And, send me some info. If you want more shows like this, that's awesome. But let's get into it. This is my interview and just general conversation with Steve Gatrost. All right, Metalheads, I am being joined right now in person. Hey, look, this is becoming a trend all of a sudden. Got another in-person interview. Hopefully things are starting to get a little bit better for some people out there. With Steve Gatrost. Steve is a local artist from Louisville, Kentucky. Steve, how you doing?
Good. I'm good. Enjoying my Sunday. Enjoying getting to meet up with you and get out of being kind of taking a break from running constantly.
Right, because, we're all people, we're all busy all the time. By the time this is being recorded, and by the time you get to hear it, might be a few days from now, but cool. But it's like 6 o'clock on a Sunday. We're just chilling out at the tattoo shop where he works currently. Yeah. If you want to give him a shout out, you're more than welcome to.
It's Spring Street Tattoo in Jeffersonville, Indiana. It's the historic district of Jeffersonville.
So if you want to come down and get some work done, call them and make an appointment.
Yeah, or you can hit my Instagram up.
Yeah, definitely.
It's just Steve Gatrost, Instagram. I don't have a code name or any. I'm not creative enough to come up with a cool name, so I just use my own.
It's just you. So I mean, it's not some ridiculous art at.
Man, that always sets me back sometimes because I'll forget people's actual names. Then like we were talking earlier, I'll meet them through Instagram, and then I've almost like it's almost like I have to remember 2 names now, and I'm already bad at remembering names.
Right. What it kind of reminds me of the guy who does the patches for my band and the Metal Forge. Is everybody knows him by his screen name and his business name. And it's just one of those things. Shout out to UK Art Patcher, by the way. If you're friends with him on the social webs. So, Steve, tell everybody out there in Metal Forge land, what made you want to become an artist? When did you notice that, hey, I'm pretty good at this?
And I started drawing so young. It was but I really remember early on, I think 7, drawing robot dinosaurs, in 2nd grade. I think that was around the time I was super into Transformers and stuff. I'm 43, so I was born in 77, so
right on.
This would have been the 80s. It started moving into, I started listening to a lot of music, and music has always been the album art. Skateboards and album art. Those are the 2 things that I started reproducing, and it was just I don't know. It hit me probably 8th or 9th grade where I was I can maybe do this for a living. I can figure out a way to do this. And then I just started, I started really thinking about how I could do this. I got into screen printing and stuff like that, graphic design, which at that point was still all done by hand. It wasn't really, there was people doing it with, Illustrator programs on the computer, but the internet wasn't a thing yet. So,
right.
So a lot of, cutting and pasting and things like that, which it actually helped me transition into tattooing pretty easily.
Right, because you already knew how to do everything by hand as opposed to on a screen, which you had said before we had actually started recording that you're 100% old school with this. Mm-hmm. You're pen to paper guy and pencil to paper guy as opposed to using Photoshop and stuff.
Yeah, I love the feel of brushes, pens, pencils, against paper, and it's I actually refer to it as pen and paint porn.
Right.
It's I actually there are brushes that make me very happy. And I'll be painting with something and I'll text somebody and be like, dude, you got to check this brush out. And it's such a small thing that no one cares. But there's a few of my friends that really do. They get it. They get my weird things with certain pens that just feel right.
Right, I get that because, being a musician myself, there's certain things that, hey, you got to try these style of picks or this string combination, the feel of something when it's quality equipment.
Sure, yeah.
Kind of reminds me of something that a friend of mine had said is people who use bad equipment for so long get accustomed to bad equipment that they actually have something that is good, it doesn't feel good to them. Yeah. Which is an interesting concept. And I'm sure it's the same in art as it is in music and everything else.
I have a really good friend that lives in Maine, and he's an amazing acrylic painter. He paints with apple barrel acrylics, which are the cheapest acrylic paints you can buy. You can buy them at Walmart. They're $1 something a bottle. And whenever he gets really good acrylics, somebody give it to him, something to happen, he'll get some. He can't paint with them.
Interesting.
He just can't work with them. It's so funny to me because I'm kind of the opposite. I'm always moving up. I always feel like I'm trying to invest more in my the products. So that the only thing holding me back is my actual skill, not the tools.
Definitely. It's one of those things where, you have to hit that next progression. Mm-hmm. Because, if you're going to stay with base paint or base equipment, you're just not going to probably advance your, what am I trying to say here? You're probably not going to advance your style is fast.
Yeah, exactly. You know, and that's the goal, I think, of anyone who's making art or music, is that you always want to be making positive steps forward. Like, you always want to be progressing. Doesn't matter how fast you're progressing.
Right.
You know, that whole game of, I feel like, getting caught up with how fast you're progressing is a losing battle. You know, I've learned that as I've gotten older. You know, where you're seeing somebody else you play music with, or they make art, and they're progressing faster than you. And then all of a sudden the frustration comes in, and then the self-doubt comes in, and then
jealousy.
Yeah, the jealousy, the resentment. And really, man, the only thing, you know, as human beings we should be doing is as far as this goes, is just trying to get better every day. You know, our progress is going to be different than somebody else's.
Right, because
and some people are just naturally more talented, and that's okay. You know?
True.
It's go ahead.
It's the thing of saying the be kind to everyone thing, because everybody's fighting a battle you know nothing about kind of deal. Same with being able to progress as an artist or a musician, or even in your job.
Yep.
You know, you got to take that time, because I'm one of those people when it comes to art or music or anything like that you have to have this to get to this. And I always equate, you couldn't go from Master of Puppets to the Black Album. You had to have Justice in there.
Sure.
So, and the natural progression of things.
Yep. That's for sure. That's it's a natural progression, and everybody moves at their own speed. And it I think as a young person, if somebody had told me that, I would have had a lot less frustrations in my early 20s. And,
right.
You know, it's speaking of Metallica, though, those album covers, just like most artists I know, Pusshead, man.
Oh gosh,
he's I can't.
If you're not familiar with the artwork of Pusshead or Brian Schroeder, there it is.
Yep.
There's his artist name and his real name.
Yeah, he was ahead of the curve.
Yeah, because that was a long time ago.
He had a code name, a handle, a long time ago.
Definitely. And for years, after seeing James's artwork, because James is an artist as well.
Okay.
He was drafting and stuff like that in high school. I always thought that it was him.
Yeah.
Under a pseudonym like that, but it wasn't. But you can reach this guy, but he's a pen to paper kind of person.
Yeah.
He doesn't do anything on the internet. He had like a fan page, but you could get a commission from him, but you had to get his mailing address and send him a letter, which is totally cool.
I love that. Yeah, there's a couple old school tattooers I know like that you literally have to write them a letter still, and they'll write you a letter back.
Wow.
And then they'll give you a date. And one guy in particular, it's like, I think and I don't think this is the same now because they don't really have them, but he used to give you an address for a payphone, and you would call his studio, and then he would walk up and then walk you over to his studio.
Interesting.
And this was up, like 5-6 years ago, so.
Until they took the payphone out.
Yeah. It's funny, but Pusshead was a crazy influence, and what's crazy about that style of artwork is you're talking about maybe James having done artwork. Well, if you ever listen to the band Baroness, Baroness's singer, guitarist John Dyer Baisley, he's an incredible artist, and their covers for their albums, which very much look like if the old. I believe he was Italian, Alfonso Mucca. He was an Art Nouveau guy. If he had a baby with Pusshead, John Dyer Baisley would have been that artist.
Wow.
And all the Baroness albums, or the record covers, are so beautiful. And that's one of those guys where I'm like, man, you make such good music. You can sing, play guitar, and then you're a crusher of an artist. That's where the jealousy comes. You know what I mean? It's like, I'm happy for him, but at the same time, I'm like, man, dude, like,
he's a jack of all trades, master of all trades.
Yeah.
It's like, does he sleep?
Yeah, exactly. Because he does tons of art for other bands. Like, some of my favorite, like the band Black Tusk. Like, he's done a bunch of stuff for them.
Shout out to those guys.
Yeah, it's I love seeing stuff like that. But for sure, with tattooing, getting into tattooing, I think it came from a lot of like music, being in punk rock, hardcore scene, seeing the guys that I idolize, seeing them having tattoos, the metal guys, like, and then being young and just like when I was 18, I got my first tattoo. I was in the Marine Corps, and basically the person who tattooed me was, I don't want to say they were terrible, but they were not an artist. They were obviously just somebody who was friendly with the guy who owned the shop, you know, and he just kind of like taught them, and I was like, oh, I can do this.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
I almost had a cringe moment there for a second where I was like, so he was just like a friend of the guy and he just said, yeah, have at.
I think that, to be fair, I think it was like someone he, you know, just enjoyed having around. And, you know, you could teach someone to be a production flash tattoo artist with a person who has like very little art skills, as long as they have patience, and, you know, it's a trade that can be taught. But me realizing, watching the guy stumble over trying to get the drawing together, and I was already drawing tattoos that were probably fairly ugly at 18, 19, you know, but I was like, man, this comes way easier to me than the guy who's about to tattoo me.
Right.
You know, and I'm sure that, you know, if he stuck with it, he ended up being a great tattooer. You know, you could just tell he was very new to it, you know. And
so with that and sleeves and everything else that you have, do you still have that tattoo visible, or have you covered it up?
I had it reworked, but it's a little tribal stuff on my upper arm.
Okay.
It kind of morphed into biomechanical stuff.
Nice, which I'm a huge fan of biomech.
I'm still a huge fan. I mean, there's a face.
Yeah, definitely.
Face hugger right there on my wall.
Has anybody got that?
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
yeah,
nice.
it's on a knee. And,
interesting.
Yeah, we're actually going to color it in on Halloween. We outlined it, did the black work on it, and that's a lot for a knee. You know, you want to break up a knee. You don't want to try to do.
Yeah, because that's the probably second most used thing on your body.
Yeah, and it just swells real bad. It's really painful. I've got huge knee tattoos. And one of the most metal tattoos I have is a big Viking skull on this knee.
Nice.
You know? But yeah, I just, you know, I had been hanging around a couple of tattoo shops, and I was in the Marine Corps Reserve, so I was 2 years active, 2 years reserve, and then I got out. So during that reserve time, I actually started learning to tattoo during that time. Okay. And that was under Keith Miller, who owned Eternal Images back in the day, back in the 90s.
Nice.
And that was such a big, you know, that was a huge thing for me, because everybody who worked there and all the guys who were getting tattooed were all like in bands and stuff. And
it's like they go hand in hand.
Oh yeah,
for sure. Which, you know, speaking of tattoos and bands and stuff, I want to give a shout out to Nick Burks from Stonecutters. He said that he had some of your work.
He's got about, I would say I've probably done like 60% of his tattoos.
Oh wow, that much even.
Yeah,
he didn't say that. He just said, yeah, he's done some work for me, and I'm like, wow, that's cool.
Nick's one of my like best friends still. You know, I don't get to see him that often. You know, he's in 4 bands. You know,
I know. Yeah,
and even with COVID, you know, he actually lives.
He had moved away.
He moved up to Fort Wayne. So, but we before he started playing with Stonecutters, we traveled a lot together to go get tattooed by people.
Okay.
So, you know, just a lot of driving, listening to music, you know, bullshitting about stuff. And when he got in Stonecutters, my friend Brian Omer, I'm sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Shout out to him. He's been on the show as well.
Brian's such a sweet guy. You know, he was, you know, I've known him forever too, and he was just like, you know, hey, I'm kind of looking for a guitar teacher. Do you think your buddy Nick might be interested? You know, and then they met. That's how they met. And then shortly after, Brian was like, yeah, I'm thinking about asking him to join the band. And he was like, I'm a little reluctant because Nick's so much younger than us.
Right.
Because at the time, Nick would have been like 26 maybe, and they were, you know, in their early 40s.
Right. And absolutely.
But I think it was just such a, you know, it just worked, you know, when they did it. It really kind of took their band to the next level, you know. And
definitely. And ridiculous musician. Follow him on Instagram and Facebook and stuff. And he on the Instagram posts, he will post guitar videos, and they're absolutely insane. He's like hammering stuff out for. You might get some sneak peeks of new songs.
Yeah,
because he's always doing that.
Yeah, I love it. I love that Nick's turning into a successful musician. Like he's he's able to make a living at it.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
That's the goal, I think, of any musician. And like we had talked a little bit through Instagram, me and you, and I played a little bit of music.
Right.
I didn't play an instrument. I tried playing bass. I never really could get it. I sang for a band for about a year.
Okay.
And the musicians in the band were all so talented. I wasn't.
Oh, come on. I mean, looking around at some of the stuff that you've got here, which I am going to post links to your social medias and stuff like that so people can see it.
It was fun, but it was the first year I had started my apprenticeship. I started my apprenticeship 6 months after I joined the band. And about 3 months into my apprenticeship, I realized I couldn't do both. There was just no way I could work like a full-time job, try to apprentice, try to balance this. And I also, to be fair, I'm not just saying because to be humble or something, I was holding those guys back. They were all three, honestly, just good musicians. And it wasn't that I was like some terrible musician, I just was new to it.
Right.
We weren't aged the same. I was a two-year-old playing with, people in their upper teens, if not young adults. So I could see at that point, I was like, man, it's just going to take so much more out of me to get to where we're on a level playing ground, and I'm such like an OCD perfectionist and stuff. Like, we played a couple of times in front of, a handful of people, but I was real particular about us playing out because I wanted everything to be perfect, and like, it was almost driving me crazy.
Right. And, in the music industry, things seldom go right.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
More stuff goes wrong, I think.
Sure.
And it's definitely a hard thing to get under control.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Because the train starts rolling.
It's so many personalities, and I think that, like, I always compare, like, when people tell me their gripes about touring with the band, I'm always like, man, it's like a tattoo shop. You got 4 other artists, and, like, I work with 1, 2, 3, 5 other people. And so, you're always going to have, there's so many different personalities. There's always going to be one person that maybe butts heads with another person, or one person that just does something that irritates one person, and then that irritation irritates the other person, and it's like, I'm always impressed when a band doesn't have a lot of lineup changes.
Right.
Like, just like tattoo shops, when I see something like, oh, that crew worked together for 15 years. I'm like, how?
Right. There's crews that I've seen and come and go from shops around town that have started their own shops and changed people there, and that's always an interesting thing to see as well.
With Acme, we kind of all worked together for a long time, and then Jay Fish, who started Acme and owned it, he sold it a few years ago.
Okay.
And then that was kind of like where the shop just changed what it was. It was starting to move into more of a walk-in, kind of a high traffic shop, and it just isn't my speed. So, that's basically where that split came from. But I say I'm always impressed when there's a crew together for 15 years. But now that I think about it, we all worked together for 10, 12 years before anyone started leaving.
Right.
And again, it was no like crazy drama or anything.
But it was. But was it due to the walk-in business as opposed to like boutique style business?
I think a little bit. I think that I think it's just natural change, and everyone changes, and the when the guy who bought it, he, it was an investment for him too, and he was looking at, end game, like you can tattoo for so long, but you can't. He was making smart business moves, but the smart business moves for older tattooers, it was like, for me and some of my friends, it was just more like a distraction. We weren't used to, and so sometimes it would make it hard. It's like there's so many people in the shop, and there's so much bustle, hustle and bustle going on, and I'm just trying to do my tattoo, and,
right.
So realistically, he was making all the right moves for that business. It just wasn't the right moves for me. So
as a person,
yeah, and even leaving, it's like it. You know, we left on good terms. You know, everything was fine. You know, it was sad. You know,
Right.
But, you know, because it's like I look at it as like being in a band with somebody for 16 years. You know, and then because you say, oh well, I'm going to stay in contact, and we do. You know, but you don't see each other. You know, and you realize that the people you work with are the people you see the most. People you play music with, like if you're going on the road and stuff, those are the people you see the most.
Right. It's one of those things where, you know, I don't understand, but I kind of do understand how bands like Motley Crue or Poison, who absolutely hated each other, could still get together and play because of the money involved. They kind of that was the driving force, was the almighty dollar and the end result. Sure. Because it was for the love of the music, not necessarily the love of each other. Which is a needle point on, you know, one thing that this person does gets under this person's skin.
I feel like they would have been to a point where, you know, they're different than like, you know, a smaller band who's like might have a van. Sometimes sometimes they're lucky to have an RV. Sometimes they get a tour where they get a tour bus, you know, for a month. But, you know, at that time, with Motley Crue, Poison, whatever, they may have all had separate buses. You know what I mean? You don't know.
At some point.
Yeah, you don't know, because they had so much money. You know, it's like, I just imagine Tommy Lee having a harem inside of a bus. You know, and it's just his bus. He's got a driver, him, and a harem.
Right.
You know, and it's like, but...
and a whole lot of drugs.
Yeah, exactly. I was really fortunate to, you know, I've gotten to see a lot of the behind the scenes, like with music stuff, and I've tattooed the band Hatebreed.
Okay.
Like a whole lot, and gotten to be, you know, good friends with those guys, and I've tattooed on their tour bus several times.
Interesting.
And they were on Ozfest. They were a staple in Ozfest for a long time.
Right.
You know, I would almost say like a decade. I feel like they played Ozfest. And I would always meet up with them for a handful of dates. And I would tattoo a lot of the bands that were playing Ozfest.
Okay.
And you know, it was really always interesting to see the different levels of these bands. You know, where they're at. You'd see them the next year, and then you would see where they're at. And some of them would just blow up in a matter of months. And it was just very interesting to me to see all the different personalities, you know what I mean?
Right. Because on a huge festival show like that, you've got so many people that make the machine work that you've got the second stage, a group of guys and gals that make that work musically, and being around them, and then you've got the people who are not necessarily want to say upper echelon, but the higher end of the card. You know, your main event, as they would say.
I always felt with Ozfest that we were always like the people I hung out with. You know, it was all second stage bands. And we were definitely like, there was a certain areas we were not allowed to go. It didn't matter what band you were in.
Right.
You know, like... And,
you don't come close to Ozzy.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. You know, and it's funny because people are like, oh man, did you ever meet Ozzy? And I didn't. I never met Ozzy. I never met Sharon.
That's probably a good thing.
Sure. I do have a decent story. I did Jack Osbourne's first tattoo.
Are you serious?
Yeah. I did it on Hatebreed's bus.
Wow.
And he was just a giant Hatebreed fan. So him and Jamie got along real good.
Right.
He was just always around. And, you know, looking back, I was kind of naive, but I never watched the Osbourne show.
Right.
Until, like, after I met Jack. And because I just didn't know. You know, like, I love Black Sabbath. I love Ozzy. But other than, you know, his family never crossed my mind as being, you know, celebrities.
Right.
You know, and they were almost like, to me, like, I guess how people view the Kardashians once not in a bad light, but just like they were celebrities.
Right.
You know, but during this time at Ozfest, like, you know, Jack and Kelly or whatever, they just walked around like little kids all through all this stuff. The Melee. You know, like young teenagers, and they're just like, you know, and just going on people's buses, saying hi to everybody, you know, and
making sure everybody's okay. And...
Yeah. And Jack had a big part in, even at 15, 16, on picking the bands for the second stage.
Definitely. I've been to that era of shows with them, so I definitely know what you mean.
I think he was 16 when I tattooed him. And I remember I was like, you know, is this okay with your mom? And he was like, yeah. And she had just got diagnosed with some sort of cancer.
Oh, no. Yeah.
And so she was sick. And he got a little heart that said mum, like M-U-M. Because they're English or what.
Right.
You know? And, but I remember him being like, asking the guys, like, if they could play some music, you know, whatever, while he was getting tattooed. And I'm like, yeah, what do you want to hear? And he's like, oh, I want to listen to Tool. You know, and they're like, cool, awesome, man, we got you. And the minute I started tattooing him, they started playing Sabbath. Like, really loud.
Wow.
And I guess, you know, not that he dislikes his father's music, but it wasn't what he was wanting to hear.
Right.
You know, and I remember that was just hilarious to me. But also looking back, it's like, you know, it was almost like hazing in a way.
Right.
You know, he was a young kid, and they're hazing Ozzy's son. You know, and
you want to hear Tool? Here's where it started.
Yeah, exactly.
We've got 40 years to go through.
Yeah. And one of those Ozfest Tool played on. I remember that.
Yeah, like 97 or 98.
Yeah, I think they played again because I didn't go on that tour until the early 2000s. And I want to say it's that infamous like show in Michigan or something where they were pulling up the grass and throwing it.
Oh no, they did that in Indianapolis. When I was there in '99.
Okay, Noblesville, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Slayer came on the stage.
So I'm off then. I wasn't on that tour. I wasn't.
Yeah, Hatebreed was not on the '99 tour or the 2000 tour. I think they were a little bit later.
This would have been like 2003, probably.
Yeah.
You know, and it was a few years, and yeah. But it just seemed like Tool played. I don't know why I'm thinking that, but
they could have that later.
Yeah, I could be wrong about that too. I've seen Tool. I saw Tool in '97, and the Melvins opened for them.
Wow.
And oh man, you want to talk about an obsession coming out of there, because I had never heard the Melvins in '97. So I was like, what is this band opening? You know, I see this guy like King Buzzo, and he comes out and his hair is all big and goofy, and I was like, I left there an Uber fan.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Like, I was like, whoa, what is this? But what an innovative band too. If you've never delved into the Melvins, please do.
Well, I mean, Nirvana had a huge Melvins influence.
Yeah.
So, for sure.
Hey guys, Wrestling Steve of the Wrestling Steve Show here. So if you're currently listening to the Metal Forge with Mark Jackson, then you understand that Mark Jackson has a pretty discerning taste when it comes to music as a whole. You'll also understand that he has a discerning taste for professional wrestling, just like me. My show is called The Wrestling Steve Show. I talk about modern and classic pro wrestling in a completely unbiased, unfiltered way. Be sure to check me out on all available podcasting platforms. That is The Wrestling Steve Show. And I am the host, Wrestling Steve. Just remember, like Confucius said, man who goes through turnstile in Thailand is going to Bangkok. Pro wrestling.
Tell me about life on the road as a tattoo artist. Have you done residency in other cities and states? Because it seems like a thing that tattoo artists go on tour at some point as well.
I've done a lot of it. I almost exclusively wanted to do that. I've got some pretty bad medical problems, so when they started hitting me, I started slowing down. But when I apprenticed for a year and a half in Louisville, and then I moved, and I started moving to a new city every year.
Okay.
I would sign a lease for a year, work in a shop for a year, learn everything I could, move to another city. And I wanted to do that for basically a decade. I did it for 5-6 years.
Okay.
My medical problems were why I moved back. And then once they started getting under control, then I started going out. At that point, I had met enough people, and my skill set was was much better, more honed in, I was able to start traveling the country. Just going and sitting in at a shop for a week at a time.
Okay.
I still do it for the same reason. I like to go work with people, pick their brains, watch them work. Maybe get tattooed, kind of fly on the wall, kind of.
Right.
For me, it's the best way to learn, and I still never want to be annoying to someone, so I just quietly watch what they're doing and absorb. I don't like to ask too many questions. I don't like to, and I don't think anyone really gets annoyed with that. But for some reason, early on, I was always real conscious of, if I was driving when I was getting my arms done, I was driving to Chicago to get tattooed by John Clue, who he's played in a bunch of metal bands from New York and Chicago and stuff. And but even with him early on, he was almost like a mentor, and I was always very, like cautious to not, I don't know, like
you didn't want to badger him.
Yes,
you wanted to. It's almost like learning through osmosis at a point.
Yes.
Because you're absorbing everything that he is doing and why he does certain things, but you don't have to ask the question.
Certain movements, certain the way he's holding something, the way
right.
It's like visually recording it with your own eyes.
Definitely.
But I still do it. I right up until COVID happened. I had even almost more so the last 2 years I've traveled. I did like 19 guest spots like in a year and a half.
Wow.
So that's going somewhere every few weeks.
Definitely, yeah.
Yeah, it was, and maybe so. I feel like the last few years was because I was in a long-term relationship that ended. So I had a little bit more freedom.
Right.
And not like freedom. Oh, I'm totally free now. I can do whatever the fuck I want. It was more like I felt like it was unfair to my partner to always be on the road.
Right.
So
I get that.
Once we weren't together anymore, I was like, well, this has always been something that I've been passionate about, and I kind of almost amped it up. May have even overdid it a little bit, because when quarantine hit, I was definitely tired.
Right.
I was.
So the break that you got for the first few months of COVID-19 was probably a well-needed break as well.
I couldn't believe how much I needed it. I had just moved here to this shop when we got shut down. I think we got shut down on the 10th of March, and I started March 1st.
Oh, wow. So
I was here for like a week, and I was super bummed. But then after a couple of weeks of being home, I was like, man, I needed this. Like, I need it. And I started looking back, and all my breaks throughout 23 years of tattooing have all been around a surgery or something. It's almost like I need some kind of pandemic to be like, okay, it's okay to take some time off.
You need to have a health issue to have a break.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Like, oh, cool. You're having abdominal surgery. Yeah. You can take 2 months off. And that's no kind of break.
So, do you get bummed out when and if you have to have a surgery and they have to actually make incisions rather than laparoscopically for the work that you've had done in places?
A little bit. I tell you the truth, most of my surgeries were late 20s, early 30s.
Okay.
And I was still in the mindset that we talked about earlier, the comparison. The people that what would you call it when someone's kind of on the same level as you, been doing it about the same time? Whatever like my friends that were tattooing who had been at about the same point I was.
Right.
I was watching them pass me up.
Okay.
And so it was not like being upset. It was more or less being upset because I was so competitive.
Okay.
Like, oh man, they're
I meant like to the work that you'd had.
Oh no, I totally get what you're saying. Yeah, I had my doctors were really good about it. They cut almost everyone I've had, every surgeon I've ever had has.
They followed the lines.
They did a good job. I swear. Yeah, I've got massive scarring on my stomach and on my shoulder and stuff, and it's crazy the way they were able to work with it.
That's interesting, because I'm sure there's some of them that mangle the hell out of people.
I would say that there's some that may mangle people on purpose. Maybe not like scarring them on purpose, but just like they don't like tattooing and they're just like don't respect it. And they're just like it's not art, and they're just cutting willy nilly wherever.
Right.
And
it is art.
Yeah, for sure.
It's definitely art.
Because I will tell you this much: as nice as most of my doctors have been, most doctors I've encountered, and I've encountered a lot, are not tattoo friendly.
Right.
If you ask them a question about a tattoo, or hey, my body is reacting this way, the answer is always you shouldn't get tattooed. Almost always, and that's frustrating.
It is, because I had a healing issue with one of mine, and they were like, "Wow, that is inflamed. But here, you should take this. This should help out with everything." Gave me like a steroid cream, and I was like, "All right, thanks." But they were totally cool with it, and I was surprised because that's actually a religious ran hospital.
Really? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's a saint something. I'm not gonna.
Okay. Yeah,
you're not gonna call them out by name, but.
Well, yeah, I mean, I've had some issues with healing because of my autoimmune issues, and every doctor I've ever brought it up to has been like, instead of trying to find a way around it, you know, like, hey, maybe don't let the air hit it so much, or don't, you know, because you can grow staph because of the air, or, you know, something like that. They're just like, don't get tattooed. Don't get tattooed. You know, and it's like, when you love something, you're not going to stop.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to stop now.
Yeah. I don't think, I mean, until I get to a point where I'm old enough where it's just excruciatingly painful because your pain tolerance has dropped so much,
right.
I won't stop. You know?
And the skin gets thinner over time.
Yeah.
Right. I had somebody that I was talking to who was like 65 and decided to go in and get something and hadn't got a tattoo in like 15 years or something since they were like 50. And they were like, "Oh my gosh, it was so unbearable."
Yep.
And it was like a wrist tattoo.
Yeah, it shouldn't even be that bad right there.
Right, and because their skin had thinned out so much, it was almost like going straight into the.
Yep. Well, I mean, you have to, you know, notice. I mean, too, you know, it's like getting tattooed in your 20s and getting tattooed in your 40s is totally different.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, it's just your pain tolerance just isn't as high, and I always tell people. I told Nick that even, you know, get the hard places out of the way. If you really want a bodysuit, get the hard places. You know, get your ribs, your armpits, things like that are just treacherous. Get those knocked out.
Yeah, I don't have anything underneath arms or anything like that, but I've got stuff that comes close.
Yeah, that's about the same right there in your chest.
But it was rough. I was like,
oh yeah, hanging on to the chair with your digging your fingernails in. Like,
grabbing the chair. Yeah, that's. And then he asks, "You okay? Do you need a break?" I'm like, just go, man.
I love getting tattooed, and I hate it at the same time.
Oh yeah, I always look at it as therapy. Getting something too fast between sessions for me is, you know, waiting a few years between certain things. When I had one of my pieces done, I was just like, you know, it'd been like 5 years. And I was like, it's time.
Yeah.
I've got to have that therapy. Yeah. And it is therapeutic to a degree because a lot of people don't look at tattooing as a medical procedure.
Yeah.
And it very much is.
Oh yeah.
They, you know, even, you know, piercing is medical procedure. You need sterile environment and stuff like that, but it's the opening of the body. You know, as much as surgery is there to get rid of an impurity, to fix something, I think tattooing does the same.
I tattooed a doctor yesterday, and he said the same thing. He said it's basically like a minor procedure you're having done. You know, minor surgery, and especially in his case, he got tattooed from 1 till 9 last night. So he's he's from Japan, from New York by way of Japan. So, you know, he kind of needs to sit a little longer, you know, just because of traveling and stuff. But yeah, he said that too, and he's a doctor that works with like cancer patients and stuff. But he said it's like
an oncologist.
Yeah, he treats it as a procedure. You know, he has a few days off afterwards, make sure he, you know, recoups and, you know, make sure he eats enough and. You know,
right. Just like getting your blood drawn and stuff like that. So when I originally met you, I met you at Great Escape in Louisville, Kentucky, off of Bardstown Road. Check them out.
The best comic shop.
Yes, because they're an awesome comic shop. Have so much back issues and stuff like that. But they were doing a kind of an artist day, kind of like an art fair type deal.
Yeah.
And you'd been there to showcase your comic.
Yep.
Which is the Elixir. Beautiful black and white print, Japanese style artwork, which you'll come to notice when you look up his Instagram that's a lot of the motif is you have some amazing Japanese style artwork. Thank you. Tell me how that came together.
Well, I've been a big comic fan my whole life, and I've done a little bit of work with comics, like short stories, a couple pages here and there.
Okay.
I've illustrated like children's books and things like that, but never really got to do a comic. And the comic stuff that I had done had all came out digitally, and I was frustrated with not being able to hold a comic I made.
Right.
And the frustration was really coming. It was just hitting me that okay, well, I'm getting to be around 40. I need to start doing some of these things I want to do. And I went through that breakup I was talking about, and it was one of the things trying to work on comics was always tough in that relationship because it was viewed from my partner as just one of those things that was like distracting from our life too. And I was already so busy. And I get it, to a degree, and so I told myself when that ended, I was like, okay, I'm going to travel and I'm going to make a comic, and that was, I had shoulder surgery, so I had supposed to have 3 months off. I had like 2 months off. It was my right shoulder, which I'm right-handed, so I loosely sketched out the whole comic over 2 months with my left hand.
Oh wow.
And it wasn't the greatest illustrations. They were, loose. But it was kind of just a practice. I wasn't sure I was going to do anything with it. And then I was like, man, maybe if I just put them on a light box, these pages I did, and just start painting them once my right hand's better, start painting them and just kind of tightening them up a little bit. I wanted to see what that would feel like. And then it just grew into, it took me a little over a year to do the comic. And,
okay.
I wanted it to be, I wanted it to feel like my tattoo work and my natural artwork, but also I wanted it to be a lot looser.
Right.
Because with tattooing, I find, sometimes I do 4 or 5 drafts of the same image just to get it perfect, as perfect as it can be in the imperfect art form, But with the comic, I did not want that. I wanted it to be loose and fun.
Okay.
And, yeah, and I'd always admired people who could tell stories without words. And
spoiler alert.
Yeah. So yeah, if you read the comic, I ended up removing all the words, and because there just wasn't a lot to begin with, and it just felt right for some reason.
Definitely, and that's probably one of the things that I like about it is it takes you on a visual journey.
Yeah.
It's like watching a silent film to a degree. Because you begin to look at the individual panels and dissect the individual panels of everything of what's going on with water and wind and body placement.
Oh, I really appreciate it. Yeah, that's exactly what I was going for too. I wanted you to get the feeling that there was, a little bit of a hallucinatory edge to it,
very much,
and that this was like a warrior's journey that he was sacrificing for what he loved, and I also kind of wrote it around some images that I really wanted to incorporate.
Definitely. Now, because it is in black and white, was it elected to be printed that way? Because I know you've got the piece on the wall here, or was it actually done in grayscale?
No, I painted it fully black and white.
Okay.
I actually used two different blacks so that the foreground figures would look, they were a little bit cooler than the background, so they would separate.
Right.
So the whole comic is printed in color. but it's black and white. So
Okay.
we could capture all the different tones. Because if I printed it black and white, then it would have just been the same.
But it all
tone of
just
gray.
be the monotone there.
But yeah, I wanted to do it black and white. I wanted it to be very metal looking. I wanted it to be 70s heavy metal magazine, stuff like that.
Right.
Like I wanted it to be, you spoke of Richard Corbin earlier. I wanted it to have the feel of Richard Corbin, Bernie Wrights, and stuff like that.
Definitely.
Yeah, and I just really treated it like a fun project, and I just worked on when I had free time, and it gained momentum as I was working on it. And I got to tell you, and I've really never posted about it, but man, the feeling of walking in The Great Escape and having the comic on the wall with all these other comics was just like, it was like little kid dream unlocked,
Right.
And I just remember standing in front of it, and obviously nobody in there has any idea, but I'm just standing there just looking at my comic, and just between all these other issues of whatever, Avengers or whatever,
Definitely. And it gives that feeling of saying, that's me. So it's self-serving in that respect, but it's, it's just one of those things. It's like, that's a huge achievement.
It definitely felt good, and I tell you honestly, what I was getting at earlier with the stuff that I had done before being digital. I towards the end of that, I had been doing a lot of stories, working on the book, and like I had a couple publishers reach out to me about maybe publishing it.
Oh wow!
And I said no, because I wanted to completely have control. I wanted this thing to come out, like physically, and have the physical book in people's hands. Both of the companies that approached me with doing it digital with the possibility of print, and that was the reason I said I'm just not interested.
I get that.
It wasn't. I didn't do it to make money, so that wasn't a necessary
Right.
thing. If it had felt right, like somebody had approached me and been like, "Hey, we could really get this out there, in print," then for sure. But the modern age now, everything's so, digital that it's kind of, we were talking about with art earlier. I just wanted to physically hold something I had created in my hand.
Right, because it's a little bit more. It's a little bit different being an artist per se when you're doing tattoo work, because that's what somebody is going to hold on their arm, leg, whatever. You'll post a picture of it on social media or whatever now, but as it goes to stand, stuff like the contact paper where you draw out your original designs. You have that, but that's not the same as seeing an actual printed book or CD like a musician can do. Musicians do it all the time with music because there's always a physical medium for that, for the most part, I should say.
Yeah, I mean, even with around the same time, I did an album cover and for a metal band, and basically the reason I did it for them was I liked their music, but I also wanted to hold a record in my hand.
Right.
And I finished this painting that I spent several months on, and then they told me they were only going to release it through. They weren't going to.
Oh no.
And yeah, I was like, this big painting I did is never going to translate into this half-inch box picture on Spotify.
Right.
You were not,
through a digital medium.
Yeah, you were. I mean, you'd have to get a microscope out, to see some of the stuff in it. And I was so, nothing against the band, but I was just heartbroken.
Oh, I
wanted this big gatefold record that I had done the art for.
Wow.
And when I was younger, I had done one. I've done a lot of art for bands, but I'd done the cover for like a hardcore compilation.
Nice.
But it's so ugly. I was proud of this.
But it's hardcore. It's supposed to be ugly.
Yeah. This was the 90s. So it's, imagine any like agnostic front cover you ever saw, or anything. Any T-shirt.
Right.
It's like it's this black and white tough guy looking artwork. And I think the only band I liked on it was 100 Demons. There was like 30 bands on it. I didn't like any of them. But it was cool to see my artwork on something.
Hey everybody, thank you for tuning into the Metal Forge this week. I really appreciate every last one of you that listens. But before I go any further, I do want to tell you that we do have a Patreon page here. And there's 3 tiers. There's the down and dirty dollar tier. It's just $1. Hey, you're not going to miss $1. Nobody does. Then there's the $5 Showstoppers tier, which you get a patch, stickers, whatever we have that's in that price range. And then there's the $20 a month Master, where you can get a t-shirt, any size, any color of the Metal Forge logo. Fuck yeah, that's awesome stuff. Oh, and by the way, if you donate on there, guess what? You get the show 2 days in advance from everybody else. Thank you all so much. It's patreon.com/metalforgeradio. Check it out and donate today. I love you guys. Thank you. I also like to, ask some general-esque questions.
Okay.
Because, I always say this in the music shows, because we're all people. Mm-hmm. There's always some bit of common thread that we all have, whether it be music, tattoos, anything.
Sure, yeah.
So I do like to know more about just people in general.
Mm-hmm.
The things that make us tick. Do you have a favorite film?
I was trying to think of this the other day as far as because it's October. And in October I pretty much just watch horror-related stuff. But I feel like I do that all year long anyway.
Right.
In October, I'm very firm about I'm not watching anything that isn't horror.
No Star Wars this time.
Yeah. But, at least in that genre, there's a film called Event Horizon.
Okay.
And that's one of my favorites. It's sci-fi horror.
Right.
Yeah, that film for sure. I really like it's a Japan animation, but I really love Akira.
Oh, definitely.
I just saw
it's classic.
Yeah, I think it came out in 88.
Something like that, 87, 88.
Yeah.
But that's a classic when it comes to anime over here in America.
Oh, yeah.
Because that was one of the first ones that had come over, that Ninja Scroll.
Oh yeah, Ninja Scroll.
Stuff like that, for sure.
My best friend's Vietnamese, and we've been friends for since we were little kids, and he got a copy of Akira from one of his family members overseas.
Oh wow!
So it was the first film that I watched subtitled. So I maybe it was in 8th grade, and now I watch everything with subtitles, even if it's in English, just because I'm scared I'm going to miss something. I'm currently watching Dark on Netflix, and I feel like that shows it's such an active watch that I want to watch it with subtitles because I'm really involved in it. Because
I think the subtitles on there is not like the English dub.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of those things where if they dub it, they could just put on there what they're saying, whereas the subtitles come direct from the manufacturer.
Yeah.
And they'll actually put everything what's there. There's no cutout audio.
Yeah, exactly. But I love old samurai films, stuff like that.
Right.
A lot of old westerns, but we were talking about Planet of the Apes.
Right.
That franchise is probably my favorite.
Now you've got the page on the wall here from the new series.
Yep.
Now, are you a fan of both?
I am.
Series, the original series with Roddy McDowall and Charlton Heston.
I struggled with the new ones. I wouldn't watch them because they were the first ones that weren't done with makeup and prosthetics. It was all CGI.
Right.
It was there weren't any. There's no way. I had the same feeling when they did the Hollywood 2000 version of Godzilla. The Broderick one.
Definitely.
But I put my inhibitions to the side and watched the first film and loved it, and then the second and third film, it just kept getting better. And
right on.
I eventually would like to own a page from the original Planet of the Apes stories too, from the 70s and stuff.
Definitely, that would be an awesome two, both in the same frame.
Yeah. Because that page, like I said, that comic is a 4-issue comic that is a bridge between the second and third new movie.
Right.
So I feel like I own a little piece of history, but
Definitely.
you know, it's really strange too how that came about, because I was, I met Jonas Scharf. He's the artist. He's from Germany, and I met him through Instagram. Well, he worked on a book before that I loved. It was called The Warlords of Appalachia.
Okay.
And it's written by a guy from Kentucky. And
Interesting.
Yeah.
Small world.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And I didn't realize that the writer was from Kentucky until he asked me where I lived, and I told him. He's like, "Oh, well, the writer I work with is from Kentucky." And it's just really small. How we branch out to people. We talk. We meet people through the World Wide Web. And it's like 3 degrees of separation.
Definitely, and that's one of the things I've come into contact with doing the podcast is talking to people outside of the United States, and then knowing people that I know here in Louisville.
Yeah, and
it's interesting. It's just crazy. So yeah,
that's I feel like with tattooing and music and I don't know if it's like that for all music, but I feel like with heavy music, there's so many degrees of separation, and there's so many so many bands that I don't even realize that oh man, like you were in that band. Or like recently I went and saw Where Your Wounds play, and that is Jacob Bannon from Converge's newer project. It's a lot more mellow. Well, my friend Sean plays guitar for it, and Sean Martin was in Hatebreed.
Oh wow.
Well, the other guitar player, he played in a band called the Red Chord.
Right.
So we're eating dinner, talking before the show, and he told me that I played in the Red Chord, and he was like, and I play in a band called Stomach Earth. And I said, oh, that's crazy. Me and my friend Nick, who we were just talking about, were in New York and saw your first show. And
wow.
Yeah, weird, right? and I guess he's like, yeah, well, that's crazy. He's like, because we really haven't played very many shows. He's like, because it's like one of the guys from Job for a Cowboys in that band,
wow.
and they tour, they tour a lot. It's like hard to get them together.
Definitely.
But so it's like it's always something like that, some weird degrees of separation, and
right, and the as much as the internet has equally hurt, I think it's helped a lot of things like that. Whereas, like with Nick and so many other people who have been on the show, there's a lot of people who have band members all over the world.
Yeah, it blows my mind.
And they'll release albums, they'll get together and tour for a couple of months, and then they'll take their break, release an album, get together and tour for a couple of months, because that's the demographic now. You don't have to all be from the same city. You can be in Chicago, Louisville, Dallas, Germany, if that's the case, and it all works.
Well, yeah, like there's a local musician friend of mine, Ryan Patterson. He just briefly mentioned one day that he was playing bass overseas for the band called Crippled Black Phoenix.
Oh wow!
And that is the guitarist from At the Gates.
I did not know that.
So my friend Ryan, who lives a half a block from me, is playing bass with the guitarist from one of my favorite metal bands ever.
Nice.
You know what I mean? And it's like so weird, anytime I hear stuff like that, I'm always, it always gets
You're like, what?
Yeah.
That's where I thoroughly enjoy the Metal Archives, the Encyclopedia Metallica online, because it is this big bowl of spaghetti where they have over like 1 million bands submitted, and there's still bands that they don't have. And it's so cool to look at that. Do you have a favorite food? Or beverage?
Well, in Louisville, I love like pretty much anything from Vietnam Kitchen. So it's Vietnamese, Chinese food.
Right.
Just like everybody, I think I love pizza. But I could probably survive on Asian food. Like, sushi, Japanese stuff, Chinese food. Probably a little addicted even to like MSG. So it's I worked in a Chinese restaurant when I was a kid, so I feel like I was like I think that might be where the Japanese influence came from. Like I said, my friend, he's Vietnamese, but his parents were Vietnamese Chinese, so they had Chinese, Vietnamese, and Japanese art in their restaurant.
Wow. And seeing it on the walls in the restaurant.
Oh, at 14? Yeah.
Yeah.
And just being like, wow. Like it just amazing. The Buddhist imagery, like I can remember one time he had, Long's dad had a Buddhist shrine set up behind the counter. And I had just got the band Shelter. I had just got the 12-inch for Attaining the Supreme. And Shelter is a Krishna band. So for anybody who doesn't know what that is, that's Hare Krishnas who play heavy music. It's kind of wild. But so on the front of it was this very, it was like almost images from the Bhagavad Gita, I believe is how you say it, which is like the Krishna Bible.
Right.
Very beautiful imagery. And I sat the record up there in that shrine because it looked like all the other art. And man, Long's dad like blew up on me. It was so disrespectful. And I, it's, but, at 15, I don't know.
Right.
For
sure.
I mean? So, but, so being around all that stuff, it's, it definitely I think is what influenced me. And, just the imagery and the story from the Japanese stuff is definitely it's even, like a lot, it's like my horror films, a lot of like, if you've ever delved into Korean horror, they're masters. They're very masters of the subtle.
Right.
The subtle creep. Like
everybody talks about Italian horror, but it's all gore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Korean isn't gore. It's shadows.
Right.
It's very. It's almost like Lovecraft-like. Like if you read an H.P. Lovecraft story, it's the impending doom that's coming that you never see or encounter that scares you more than the actual reveal.
Definitely.
The sense of dread.
Happy Halloween, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Sure. Do you have a favorite city you've been to tattoo in?
Yeah, I would say I really enjoy New York City because of the people.
Okay.
The diversity, and the plethora of just amazing artists, and the fact that I can go see a good show. If I'm there for 10 days, I could go see a ton of shows, and all kinds of different music. But probably my favorite city overall would be either Denver or Asheville.
Okay.
I like the mountains.
Big separation between the two.
Mm-hmm. Well, I couldn't live in New York City. I can't handle it for more than 10 days or so. Actually, 5 or 6 days is pushing it. I need a slower paced place.
Right.
And I feel like with my health issues and my demeanor, I almost always feel better in a mountainous area for some reason. So, I worked in Colorado for a little over a year in Denver and Aurora, and kind of would travel back and forth. I'd go out there for months at a time, come back for a little bit, go back, and but I just always felt better, and and then with Asheville, there's a general like it's kind of almost like hippie-ish in a way, and I kind of enjoy that, just the peaceful people, and it can be a bit PC at times,
right.
But they have just such a good like music scene, like the tattoo shop I was working at, the counter guy who answered the phone, he's the singer for that band Basque.
Okay.
They're like a stoner rock, stoner doom rock band, but they've got a really good music scene. So really anywhere that's
it's got a good scene.
Yeah, it's got a good
You're
scene.
At home.
Yeah, because I'm not a super go out social person, but I will go to so many shows.
Oh yeah.
I even pushed it with the quarantine. I went and saw Woven Hand and Ohm, like the National Ohm,
Right. OM.
Yes. I think that was March 12th. And
yes, it was the Thursday before everything had happened.
I think they closed headliners the next day.
Right.
I remember sitting at a table, and I'm when I do go to shows, I like to walk around and say hi to people, shake hands, give people hugs. I was sat at a table and did not move the whole time because
Wow.
I was a little paranoid already. No one was wearing a mask yet, but I knew what was going on.
Right, because that next day, it was Friday the 13th when everything kind of came down the pike for everybody.
Exactly, and they had just closed us down as a tattoo shop, and I just don't think everyone was aware of how bad it was going to get.
Right.
And having health issues, I was like kind of sitting at a table by my, like kind of just off to myself with my shirt over my mouth a little bit, and just like, I was not going out in the crowd, and thankful that I saw that show though, because that might be the last show they ever do. I read somewhere they're going to start trying to do some like parking lot shows.
Right, which apparently they've got some coming up.
Okay.
Hopefully, shout out to Billy and them at Production Simple. They've been around for years, put on great shows, have helped out the music scene and community in Louisville so much over the years. So hopefully they'll be able to keep things going.
Yeah, I do miss going to shows. I'm one of those people. If I definitely get the fear of missing out with shows, and I've forced myself to go to shows a lot of times because it just like, I know this is going to be good. I don't have the time. I don't feel good enough to go and be social, but then I'll make myself go, and I almost always have a good time.
Well, that's good though. It's part of the introversion as well. And it's like, do I really want to do this? And it's like, fuck it, let's go.
I feel like I've definitely got some introversion. Like I can spend massive amounts of time by myself, and during quarantine I was by myself a ton,
right?
And weeks it seemed like, and but I also like enjoy socializing. So I think it's kind of like, it's almost like a social gas tank that just doesn't have as much fuel as some people's.
Understandable.
And it runs out. And when it runs out, it runs out, I'm done.
Right.
Like I'm in the back of the show, not talking anymore, and just doing what you're supposed to be doing, paying attention to the band.
Definitely. What's currently in your CD player?
I've been digging into some early 2000 stuff again. So heavier stuff that I don't think they were too big, but like Modern Life is War.
Okay.
The Hope Conspiracy. But right now, as far as like newer stuff, kind of some of the more, I don't know what you would call this music. Like it's metal, but it's almost like, I don't want to say it's math metal, but it's reminiscent of Dillinger's Escape Plan and things like that. Like there's a band called The Armed. I'm digging a lot.
Okay.
A band called Frontier, which was really good, and a band called Sectioned. They all have a kind of similar sound. Very fast,
nice.
Like very, very heavy. Like it's so obnoxiously heavy, I can't really play it in the tattoo shop. And you think, oh, it's a tattoo shop, you do that, but I'm not trying to assert,
Right.
It's, I think in tattoo shops you play to the audience. If you got a couple of like, you got a couple older ladies in here getting tattooed, I'm not blasting, anything. I'm not playing Slayer all day.
Right.
And I still love Slayer. I got to do, I got to be, meet up with Hatebreed a couple times while they were on tour with Slayer. So I've met the guys from Slayer before. And
right.
Like, and it's just like, what a bunch of nice guys. And just, hey, we were talking about Metallica earlier, and I was so into Metallica when I was like 8th grade, 9th grade. And then around that same time I discovered Slayer. And I feel like Slayer killed Metallica for me.
I understand that.
It was right around the time the Black Album was about to come out. And it was like the Black Album came out. And I loved that album. But that was the end of it.
Right.
And then it was like Slayer took me in this other direction. And it was, it's kind of like, a Judas Priest. It's like, Judas Priest even did that for me in certain ways when I discovered Judas Priest, because I was listening to Sabbath and things like that. And then you had this like, almost like, I don't even know how you would describe it, like biker glam that was like...
Yeah, that's probably accurate.
Yeah, but it was so like heavy and awesome, but like artsy and like, I couldn't get enough of it. But yeah, they're, I'm always trying to find new bands, I feel like, for sure. I know, I've been on a power trip, listening to a lot of Power Trip lately. Cause,
Okay, well, definitely.
Because he passed away, and that band, man, they never made anything I didn't like.
Right.
And
when you find a band like that, it's special.
Yeah. They're man, what a powerful band. But I really like Inter Arma. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
No, not.
Super kind of all over the place, but every album they put out, I feel like is really strong. They tour a lot with a band called Gatekeeper.
Okay.
I enjoy them a lot, and yeah, I'm kind of I can go down a long road.
Right,
with this
long
kind of
road
stuff.
of music there.
Yeah.
What are you currently reading?
I've been a little all over the place with that. For a while, I was reading a lot of kind of graphic novels that were about, like I just read the trilogy of March. It's just called March, and it's about John Lewis, who was Congressman John Lewis, who passed away this year, and it's about his the civil rights movement in the '60s and his plight to get voter rights for African Americans.
Right.
So that was a 3-trilogy graphic novel set. As far as novels and stuff, I haven't been reading as many novels. I've been working a lot, so my eyes get tired at night. Mainly graphic novel stuff. But I've been trying to find some good horror stuff, which usually ends up with kind of reading a book called A Walk Through Hell. It's by Garth Ennis.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's just about some people getting trapped in a warehouse. They're police officers. They get trapped in a warehouse, and they realize that they're actually in hell. And it's very Hellraiser feeling.
Wow. Displaced reality.
Yes. I love all the Hellraiser films. Man, what a franchise.
Oh yeah, with Clive Barker.
Oh, Clive Barker. I mean, Nightbreed, Rawhead Rex.
Mm-hmm.
I think Rawhead Rex was his first film, and it's so rough, but it's awesome.
Definitely. What is your greatest achievement?
Oh, wow. Man, I don't know how to answer that. I don't have any children, so I feel like that's a.
Up until recently, that was almost never said.
Really?
Yeah, and then I've had quite a few people here in the last few months worth of interviews start to mention, well, my kids are my greatest achievement.
And to preface it, that I don't think having a kid is the greatest achievement. I think raising a kid properly is the greatest achievement.
Right there. I agree.
I guess I could say like some of, I really enjoy doing things that are good. Like I really want to have an impact on the world in some way, and I struggle with it. I'm starting a art program at St. Joseph's Foster Home. Okay. And just teaching kids how to design characters for comics and things like that. I've been laying it out with another friend of mine, just how we can do it. It got put to a halt because of COVID.
Right.
But yeah, during during the quarantine, I had more free time, and I was able to put some energy in painting some paintings of civil rights leaders that I felt like were a little bit more obscure, that maybe if you saw these paintings you would look them up and like learn a little bit about them. And I was able to donate all that money. And but I've definitely been feeling a calling later in life to give back somehow, and I'm struggling with it also, because while I feel like sometimes when I tattoo, I'm changing somebody's appearance, maybe I'm covering up something that made someone self-conscious. It's giving them the ability to wear some clothing they didn't want to at some point, or maybe they're getting therapy out of it like you talked about. But I don't feel like it's the job that like the guy I tattooed yesterday who's literally saving people's lives who have cancer,
Right.
But as far as achievements, I mean, I don't know any real specific.
Well, maybe it hasn't happened yet. Maybe it's to come.
Yeah, I mean, I know as far as goals and stuff, getting my book done was a big one.
Right.
But I don't think achievements and goals would really. They're kind of similar, but I don't think it's the same.
I agree.
Yeah.
Because an achievement would be like selling 1,000 copies or a million copies of it. Mm-hmm. But the goal is getting it done.
Yes.
Getting the product done to get to that point.
Yeah,
See,
and
that is a little bit different.
Yeah, and that definitely interests me more than, I guess, for me, it's making it. Just like we're talking about remodeling a house, it's making it more so than, what I'm going to do with it at the end.
Right.
Am I going to keep it for 20 years and sell it for however much money I could get out? You know what I mean? Because, this or that. But yeah, you're right. Maybe I just haven't reached it yet. But I do know that I feel like a strong feeling that I need to get back to the community and the world in some way. And I think that even the quarantine, all the time I spent alone was good for me mentally in that regard, like trying to figure out what I want to do. And,
right.
You know what I mean? Like,
Absolutely. Absolutely, I do. Most overrated tattoo design to you. The one thing that you could sit there and say, I really don't want to do that.
Oh, yeah.
I've done hundreds of them. Not doing any more. What is it?
Right now would be the pocket watch tattoo. It is the design of it just does not work with the body ever. and though I haven't done a ton of them, I've done a handful. I know some guys who have done 40 or 50 of them.
Oh wow.
And it's what happens is these tattoos circulate through Pinterest. So, and they take off and they look cool, but also it turns into this thing where I want a date tattooed on me, which is fine. Everybody has important dates. So like, but then I could put the time, and then I could put it in this pocket watch, and then I could do this, and it literally turns into just a reproduction of the same tattoo over and over and over and over.
Right. Kind of like the forearm forest.
Yes, the forearm forest or the forearm tiger. Like
flames.
You'll see where the person turns their arm sideways, and it's like the eyes of the tiger and the nose.
Oh yeah.
And it's just like this weird angle, and I guess they hold it in front of their face or something. I don't know, but yeah,
right.
That's. I feel like I wish that those people would come in and just like talk to their tattoo artist more, because they probably have ideas that they don't even realize would work. Those tattoos, I feel like, come from a place of struggling with just, I want to get tattooed and I don't know what to get.
Right. I can see that.
And it's like, and it's very hard as a tattooer to come to a complete agreement over something that's permanent on someone with a total stranger. You know, because people are always like, how happy are you when someone says, do whatever you want? And I'm like, well, it depends on how much I know the person. If I know their personality, yeah, I can probably help steer them into the direction of something real cool. If I don't know them at all, I don't know what to give them.
Right.
Because I'm not going to just be like, okay, awesome, I'm going to do this super crazy metal-looking design on some guy who's, doesn't know who Iron Maiden is.
Definitely.
It's not that he's not deserving, he just isn't aware of that kind of art. He doesn't know who Pussett is. No. He doesn't see the influence, and I'm not just going to throw something on someone because
they say do whatever you want.
Yeah, and I think it's cool. They're the ones that have to live with it. Once it's out the door, I see a picture of it, but I don't really see it.
Right.
I want whoever's getting tattooed to be stoked on what they have, as long as,
As long as they're going to have it.
Yeah.
For sure. Certain places that I know refuse to do tattoos in certain places of your body. Do you have any limits personally? Aside from a shop setting, is there anywhere on anybody's body that you won't personally tattoo?
To be honest, not really. But I have stipulations with young people coming in and wanting like hand or face tattoos. I'm kind of old school like that. Like I have my neck tattooed. That's really the big visible tattoo that I have. But I have most of my body tattooed before I did that. And I always thought that way. I was like, I want to have sleeves. I want to have, my legs done before I start branching out into my hands and my neck. So that always comes into play. I'm like, well, you don't have your arms done, but you want your hand tattooed.
Right.
And why do you want that? And it always goes back to a place of attention. And it's like, you think you want that attention, but you don't know what you're getting into at 18. How limiting that can be on you. And now with, Instagram and stuff like that, it's very popular for someone to come in and want their face tattooed and never had a tattoo.
Wow.
Like little small things, like because you see people like Post Malone and people like that their faces are covered.
Right.
And regardless if you think it looks good or not, they're in a different tax bracket than we are. You know,
very much.
They don't have to think. Post Malone's never had to think about money.
No.
You know, he's not going to. So the idea of coming in and getting like lettering above your eyebrow or something blows me away. And I'm always I feel like the voice of reason. You don't want that, you know, and but fortunately, because I don't really do walk-ins as much anymore at this point in my career, I don't deal with a lot of that. I'll deal with the public, but I'm not the one a lot of times doing the tattoo. A lot of times it's like a younger tattooer or whatever, and I can kind of preface it for them. They're like, hey, you know, you need to really think about that. And one thing that's good is a lot of times to have them think about it for a couple weeks and come back.
Right.
Which either results in them changing their mind or they just go somewhere else. But you don't have it on your conscience.
Definitely. Because it is a big decision.
Yeah.
It's a huge decision. Body modification is a huge decision no matter what it is that you're doing. I mean, always never take it lightly.
I got my right forearm done in 96. And at that point, I still had people who would change the side of the street that were walking towards me, you know, because I had tattoos. And, you know, that's not a thing anymore. But, you know, it's like some ladies walking down the street and you're walking up and, you know, you look like some sort of, you know, at the time it was like, I looked like, you know, a hardcore kid. Right. You know, and it like, maybe to them I probably looked like I was in a gang or something, you know, and they would, you know, change the side of the street they were walking on or look at me a little bit weird. And, you know, that got better, but there does come a form of discrimination with it.
Definitely.
And
from employment standards, if you work a Joe job,
yep,
to, again, just on the street. Somebody either changes side, gives you a wide berth,
yep,
something like that. Yeah, there is a discriminatory.
Oh, we were going, me and my friend Steve, who has his hands and neck and stuff tattooed, we were driving to Nashville to see the band Quicksand. They were doing like a reunion tour.
Okay.
And speaking of Tool, that's a band that was pre-Tool that I feel like sounds like Tool.
Okay.
You know, that Tool had to have heard this band. You know, not that Tool's not amazing, but they had to have a little influence on them. So we're driving down there, and my friend is reaching up and messing with the visor and in my car as we're going past a cop. And I was like, man, you might want to put your hand down just in case, you know, like, because, you know, you don't want to get profiled or anything, you know, and yeah, we got pulled over, and he checked both our IDs, and luckily, you know, it went pretty smooth, but I've been profiled ever since I've had my forearms tattooed, like, and usually it's been okay, you know, but it's definitely a real thing.
Right.
You know, it's, you know, because, you know, in a way, I guess, you know, profiling, you know, you're looking for people who are doing bad things, you know, and I guess if you kind of have that look, you know, you may get pulled over or stopped or, you know, so I imagine if an 18-year-old kid has a bunch of face tattoos, it's a good chance that anytime he's driving around, he or she may just get pulled over for not doing much of anything.
Right.
You know,
for being a good, well-adjusted citizen that uses their left and right turn blinker.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm trying to politely say that, you know, yeah, it's there is a certain like stigma with it.
Right.
You know.
Right.
I never want to ruin somebody's life.
Right. Absolutely. You've been to a lot of shows, been to a ton of shows.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me somebody you wish you never saw live.
Ooh.
Like you're such a fan of the band, but seeing them live completely ruined it for you.
There's been a couple, but they're not real big bands. I was pretty big.
If it's incriminating evidence on current bands,
no,
you don't have to answer.
There's an instrumental band that I really, really enjoy painting to, called Godspeed Your Black Emperor.
Okay.
And they're borderline, like the early stuff is metal, you know, and what a horrible horrible display of music live.
Wow.
It was the headliners, and it was just. I think a lot of it may have been their the sound. There was just so many things going wrong.
Right.
And but I guess a lot of it for me has been meeting people, and they just turn out to not be awesome.
Right.
And they turn me off. I will say this without saying who in the band, but I'm a Uber Slayer fan, and I got to talk and meet with one of the guys for quite a while, and he almost made me not like the band anymore.
Wow.
Yeah. And very, just very off-putting. He was, how much longer are you going to be on the tour? And I'm like, oh, I'm leaving tomorrow. Oh, I was going to let you tattoo me. And then it went on to tell me how great of a thing that would have been for me. And I was just like, okay.
Oh, I see what you mean. Like,
yeah,
what can I do for you?
Yeah, and I was like, cool. I'm just sitting there the whole time, like, I never said anything. I just was like, okay. And I remember when I came home from that, it took me a little while to listen to the band again, just because there was a lot said, and it was just but man, the weighing it out with the other guys are all so awesome. It was just like,
Right. Fred Durst was my guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, completely ruined it.
Yeah.
Seeing him just be a complete bastard.
Well, that's done it to me before too. When you see people talk to their fans.
Oh no, this was backstage.
Oh yeah,
at a show.
Okay,
and he was a complete bastard to everybody in the dressing room.
Well, that's the thing is, it's like the reason I didn't say this guy's name is because everybody idolizes him.
Oh, I get it. And I don't mind name dropping Fred Durst.
Yeah. No, in the metal community, this is
I get it.
It's a name, and it's like I don't want to make anybody dislike that band because Slayer's amazing.
Oh, definitely.
I couldn't say enough nice things about 3/4 of the band. It's
Who would you have liked to have seen? And because you're an artist, and and you have a love for music, who would you have liked to have seen perform music or tattoo if money or time was no object?
Like who I would go get tattooed by,
go get tattooed by, or see a band live that you'd never been able to see because of time, like somebody had passed away, and like Led Zeppelin in their heyday, something like that, or maybe like an Ed Hardy or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Who would you have liked to have experienced?
I'll tell you the truth, and I've seen the incarnation of Sabbath, but Sabbath, when I was too young to see them,
right?
I think was a completely different.
So you're talking 70s,
yes,
Sabbath first run,
but really any of that time, like Priest, because it's like seeing these bands later is awesome, but
they're already acclimated.
It's not the same thing,
and it's the machine at that point.
Yes,
absolutely.
And I feel like Sabbath. Also, I never saw Faith No More, and I know that Faith No More got back together and did some touring, or were supposed to this year.
Right.
I think they did some touring the last couple of years off a new album or something. I kind of listened to it, wasn't really that into it, but I feel like they were on tour recently and they were with a couple bands I liked too, like Helmet and somebody else.
Yeah, I think I remember something.
No, you know what it was? You're talking about Fred Durst and it was Korn.
Oh, okay.
And I'm not I like the first Korn album, but I'm not a fan of Korn.
Right.
But that's what it was. They were going to play this year, and I was thinking about going because Faith No More and Helmet were opening for them.
Nice.
And I figured, I could just leave if Korn sucked, which I'm sure they would not suck.
Right.
I just don't know their music.
Right. The stuff now.
Yeah, because when I started tattooing, that's when Limp Bizkit first came out, and the second Korn album was coming out, and it was turning very much into like this rap rock kind of thing.
Right.
And it was fine. I was okay with it. But then it just got to be too much. It just wasn't my thing. I'm still a fan of the Deftones.
Oh, absolutely.
And they came out of that, which I'm always
funny.
Always appreciative of that,
First time I ever saw the Deftones was February of 1999. They were on tour with Black Sabbath in the reunion tour.
Okay.
And Pantera.
Oh, wow.
And I saw them in Dayton, Ohio. And I was actually just talking with somebody about this the other day. And how much they had changed between February when I saw them and June when I saw them again on Ozfest.
Yeah.
Like, it's like they blew up overnight.
Oh, yeah, yeah. I saw them with Limp Bizkit.
Oh, wow.
At the brewery.
Oh, yeah,
At the
absolutely.
brewery Thunderdome.
Missed that place. First concert I ever went to. First big band concert was at the Thunderdome.
Really?
Yep. Social D.
Okay.
Yeah.
I saw Social Distortion there once.
Yeah.
You know who else I saw there, which was really interesting, I never got into the music, was Insane Clown Posse. Like, I could not get over these guys. And this was in the 90s, before they were real big. But I saw a bunch of good shows there. I saw Guar there, and like, just so many good, I saw Cannibal Corpse and Korn there with Fear Factory.
Oh, yeah. Probably 96-ish.
Yeah.
For
and
sure.
Man, they were heavy.
Yeah.
Korn was heavy.
At that point.
And then that album came out, the first one, and it was heavy. Like, and then I don't know what happened. They evolved into something else.
Right. They changed an entire generation of music.
Oh,
I think.
absolutely.
Granted, I don't think it's necessarily made a comeback.
Yeah.
As of yet, it might. Everything comes around again, they say, but we're getting back into the thrash era, so.
Yeah. Yeah, and man, talking about Power Trip earlier. Like,
right.
Oof. What, how to be a throwback band but still be so, like, not.
Into now, absolutely.
Yeah. Like, they remind me of so much, I can't even put my finger on it.
As much as I love headliners, I would seriously love to have seen so many of these bands today at the Thunderdome. Just because of the way of the stage setup.
Well,
where you walk down into that pit and they've sat in the corner and played, and you had the catwalk around the top.
Yeah.
Such a awesome venue. Miss it.
Oh, yeah, that venue. I saw, I believe it was Endpoint's last show there.
Oh, wow.
And I don't know if you knew this when you interviewed Chad Castetter, but, he played in Endpoint.
Yeah,
and,
definitely.
Endpoint was a huge band. Like, for me, just like, because they were local, but they also, like, just the ideas they were pushing and stuff.
Right.
Like, they were much bigger than I ever realized they were.
Right.
Same thing with, I saw King Horse a couple of times.
Wow.
And King Horse, man.
And, we talked about this earlier. And here's the shout out, too, to Pusshead on that. Because he did the album artwork for King Horse. Which, if you're not familiar, you can always tell him by his line work and his skulls.
Yep.
All look ridiculously good.
Yeah. Well, that album was produced by
Glenn Danzig.
And I took a bus, I think. Yeah, I took a bus, I believe, to that show in Cincinnati. And King Horse was supposed to play. They were supposed to open, and they ended up breaking up. But it was King Horse, supposed to have been King Horse, Danzig, Suicidal Tendencies, Metallica.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and I remember the singer from Suicidal had broken his leg, and he was sitting on a couch the whole time.
Oh, wow.
Like, can you imagine this maniac full of energy? Like, he had crutches, and he kept trying to get up on his crutches, and the thing about Suicidal is, it wasn't that they were, technically this insane band. They were just full of energy, and, they were such a good live band.
Right. Well, they were an insane band, lyrically, I think.
Yeah.
From the subject matter, but as it come with, musicality, they were totally, up and up.
Yeah, because there's some bands you can see that, they're so good they could literally just stand there and play their instruments, do nothing, and you're just floored by the music. And then there's some bands that it's just, the energy you get from, thinking about, I never saw Bad Brains, but I would imagine Bad Brains would have been the same.
Definitely.
Just that the singer's energy.
Oh yeah, playing on a concrete floor at a hardcore show, and just even when you're in their 40s and stuff. Definitely awesome stuff. That's one thing I wish I could have been old enough to see as well is the DC hardcore scene in the 80s. Just because just as much as the thrash scene was all over the United States, the hardcore scene was too. Oh, yeah. But it's different in every market.
Sure.
The New York scene was not as the same as it was in DC or in LA or in...
The DC scene was more political.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's the political headquarters of our country. Minor Threat and Fugazi, Fugazi still listened to Fugazi.
Oh, yeah.
There was a band that I loved from, I believe they were from DC, called Hoover. I really loved that band. And then close to there is Richmond, Virginia, has an incredible scene.
Oh, yeah.
And Avail is from there. And Avail is one of my favorite bands ever. I'd actually had tickets to go to a festival to go see the reunion tour this year. And I think that was in May, and then it got pushed to September, and then it just got canceled.
Was that Muddy Roots?
They played Muddy Roots last year.
Okay.
This year was Furnace Fest in Alabama. And there was just a bunch of bands that were reuniting, getting together. Living Sacrifice was playing. Bunch of, it was a bunch of, it was weird, the lineup, but it was about 60 bands, and I would say there was 30 that I wanted to see.
Oh, definitely.
And that never happens to me on a festival.
No.
Usually it's 3 or 4, maybe I'll watch 10 or 12 and then I'm burnt out.
Oh,
but
yeah.
I was like, I'm going to struggle with this one. Because there's 30-something bands I want to see.
And you're 3 or so, 4 stages maybe, and it's probably over 2 or 3 days, and it's hard to get to each point that you want to. Okay, it's like going to the amusement park.
For sure. Recently I saw. I kind of hate to say this, but I was at the Louder Than Life festival,
right?
And I went to see. My lady wanted to see this band called All Them Witches.
Okay.
And there's stoner kind of stuff, I guess. And I wanted to see Graveyard. And we had gotten tickets, somebody gave us tickets, and we were like, that's all we're going to see. And then we were leaving the festival. We've been there for a couple hours, right? And then I start hearing the song Walk play. And I'm like, okay, that sounds kind of awful, but good.
Right.
I'm like, that man sounds just like Phil. But the band sounded kind of rough. And I was and I got up on and I feel like I was like, am I watching Pantera? And then I realized it was Phil Anselmo and some other band. But it wasn't down or anything.
No, it's the Illegals.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it wasn't how do I put it? The band's not bad at all. It was actually pretty good. They're not Pantera.
Right.
And I feel like Phil was fine because he was in Pantera, but these guys, they definitely could not do what Pantera did.
Right. Recently had that experience to see them with Slayer on the End of the Road or whatever they were calling it tour. I think End of the Road was the Kiss tour. The Slayer No Fucks Given tour.
Sure.
But they had Phil Anselmo and the Illegals opening up for them, and it struck me as odd to see them and have 2 guitar players in a band that originally only had 1 guitar player, and the one guitar player who would play lead would play harmonized lead with a pedal, as opposed to having 2 guitar players play harmonized lead together. I was like, what is this shit that I'm watching?
Yeah, it was a clusterfuck.
Right. Yeah. I mean, top-notch guys, I'm sure they're great in their own regard they're playing with Phil.
Yeah.
And Phil's not a slouch, honestly, when it comes to putting together bands.
I'll tell you the thing with, I kind of got to meet Phil on Ozfest. He came on the bus. Phil's a He's one of those people that, I didn't even talk to him. He was a few people away from me. He was kind of out of it.
Right.
To be polite, he was very out of it. But not, he almost looked like he was asleep. And he'd been riding, I'd seen him on a golf cart all day with his handler, and he was just nodding off, I get, very tired, whatever you want to say.
Right.
But man, to get on stage, it was like somebody plugged him in for fucking 45 minutes to an hour, and then they unplugged him. And it like professional, you know what I mean?
Right.
But also, like, I think when that happened was at the height of him, being like, partying.
Oh yeah,
I don't.
Yeah, I've heard he has since calmed down a lot, but not entirely, but a lot. So yeah, that era, the early 2000s stuff for them, the late 90s.
He had a handler basically to keep him from taking stuff from people, from fans.
Right.
Like, people would just hand him things, and he'd be like,
Yeah, sure.
Yep. Yeah.
Yep.
Just eat whatever someone gave him.
Yeah, for sure.
So the fact that he's still around making music is pretty impressive. I didn't even know he was on that bill. You know what I mean? And it was at that point 3:00 in the afternoon on a Friday.
Wow.
And I'm like, I just want to get out of the heat.
Yeah. Because that has been, the last few years has been when they did get to have it. Because I think they didn't get to have it last year, and they haven't got to have it this year. Mm-hmm. But it had been really hot.
It was ridiculously hot. And I know that they had talked about this year possibly having Rage Against the Machine.
Right, but Rage was only doing a handful of shows, and they had not committed. But I think the one that they were doing, they were all going to be donated to, like, political relief.
Yeah.
Or something like that.
Yeah, what's crazy about that is with Rage, like, I've always struggled with Rage. Like, I love them, but, there's always been, like...
Me too. I always struggle with Rage.
Yeah. That too. But we talked about Krishna hardcore or Krishna core. Mm-hmm. What is the singer's name for Rage Against the Machine?
Zach De La Rocha.
Zach De La Rocha. He sang for a hardcore band I loved as a kid called Inside Out.
Right.
And if you ever look up Inside Out, that is a Krishna core band.
Okay.
So he was a hard Krishna for a little bit, because this was a movement through the hardcore scene. They were recruiting kids into being Krishnas, and I'm not even sure what the Krishna belief system is, but I think it's pretty peaceful. I don't think it's anything crazy, but because we were talking about Shelter, and I always loved this band called 108.
Okay.
They were a Krishna band. One of the heaviest things you'll ever listen to. It's so heavy and obnoxious, but but it's wild to think of these guys that, would be, handing out flowers at the airport. They have shaved heads and a little ponytail on the back.
Right.
And it's like in their, their monk outfit, but yeah.
And then they're tearing it up.
At
a show.
But knowing that he was in, Inside Out, how political that was, it even grew into this huge political thing.
Right.
With Rage Against the Machine. And there was a meme going around for a while that it was some kid had commented on their page and said something about them, wishing that, I liked your music better when you separated the politics from it, or something. And somebody commented, and they're like, what machine do you think they were raging against?
Right. That's great. That is so awesome. So, I have one more question.
Okay.
But before we do that, do you have any shout-outs you want to give to people? People, places, things.
Yeah.
Who do you want to...
Well, first of all, I wanted to say, give the shop a follow, too.
Definitely.
Spring Street Tattoo. All the guys that I'm working with now are very genuine people who are really pushing the art form. Very innovative tattooing coming out of here. We were talking about Nick earlier. Nick Bergs, Chad Castetter.
Definitely.
Brian Omer. Check out all their music. My friend Sean Martin, who I was talking about, his bands, not just Hatebreed, Wear Your Wounds, Twitching Tongues. He's been in a ton of different bands. He was in 100 Demons.
Okay.
But I guess that's, just musicians and stuff that are, people that we're friends with and stuff.
Definitely. You can always check out the Nick Burke's War Cloud episode in the archives, along with the Chad Castetter from the band Worms and Brian Omer from the band Stonecutters in the archives as well. So awesome. And tell everybody how they can follow you on social media.
As of right now, I just have the Instagram.
Okay.
And it's Steve Gatrost on Instagram. I think it's just, how would you say that? At Steve Gatrost?
Yes, at Steve Gatrost. I'll include a link down below, and they'll be able to see your art and everything else on there.
And then the Spring Street page, which is Spring Street Tattoo. Just at Spring Street Tattoo.
Definitely.
And yeah.
All right, so the morbid question is, because this is the month of Halloween and the month of Spook, how would you like to die?
Ooh. I know how I'm scared to die. I don't like any, I always had a fear of drowning, so let's stay as far away from water as we can.
You and me both.
I think like anyone, if I could accomplish a good amount of stuff and then maybe go in my sleep, I wouldn't mind going out high off my brain. There's been some times in the hospital, where, it's been pretty harrowing, but there's also been times where like they gave me medicine and I was like, okay, I can just go to sleep now and I'd be okay. You know what I mean? And
right.
It's very, very peaceful. I wish everyone could pass away like that.
Right.
Like just peacefully in their sleep if they can, but I don't know if that's the right kind of answer, but
no, I think that's a great answer to that question, because it's either typically that or with my sword in my hand and
sure.
Going for it.
I totally believe in the anthem or whatever of dying on your own sword.
Yeah.
I don't think that you should build kingdoms for other people on your back, and if you have a means or a way to do something for yourself to where you can build for your future, and it's going to be taking a huge risk and a huge chance, that to me is that's awesome, because essentially that is dying on your own sword. You're putting everything into something that may not work, but at least you're not doing it for somebody else who maybe doesn't deserve it, or you know what I mean?
Definitely.
You could sacrifice yourself for someone who deserves it all day long, but if they, most of the time, or a lot of the time, I guess you could say, people work for people who don't put the work they put into it.
Right.
And they're building something for, we're seeing it right now, with all the, I don't know much about it, but, you keep hearing about these billionaires making all this money during COVID, and it's just like, the little guys are getting crushed.
Yeah.
So yeah, die on your own sword, please.
Definitely. I agree 100% on that. So, Steve, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Again, check the links below.
Thanks for having me.
I appreciate it, dude. This has been a long time coming. We've been talking about doing this for like a year now.
Yeah, well,
since we were on the FM show.
Yeah, I think we met in August of last year.
Something like that.
Yeah.
So just a little over a year.
Yeah.
Finally got it done.
Well, COVID has really...
Right.
I don't think this year is a fair balance of anything. I can't believe it's October.
I'm surprised that I've still been able to put out episodes weekly.
Yeah.
But, again, it's the internet and it's the phone.
Yep.
The phone has been...
Because you did Nick and Chad's through the phone.
Yes. Brian was actually the last in-person interview I had before COVID.
Okay.
And then I had one in-person during, and now that some restrictions have been lifted, yourself and I had the band She.
Yeah.
For last week's, or a recent episode.
Yeah, because I assumed that you did one of the guys from Idle Hands.
Yes, absolutely.
I assumed that was like phone or internet.
Yes. It was through the phone. It was Gabe Franco from Idle Hands.
What a good band.
Oh, hell yeah. I don't know if you follow...
Give Me the Night or whatever song. Man, first time I heard that, I was like, whoa.
Definitely.
Like, what a throwback, but yet modern.
Yeah. Absolutely. There's a lot of... they're so cool. Like, seeing them with King Diamond is where I saw them at. And that's how I'd heard of them. But shout out to them as well, because, they actually had to go through a name change.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Something to do with the trademark office wouldn't allow them to trademark idle hands for music purposes or something like that.
Weird.
So now they are unto others. So
that's unfortunate. I always hate to hear that kind of stuff.
Definitely.
Like there's been so many of those cases throughout.
Oh yeah.
Again, the parallels of tattooing and music, it's naming a tattoo shop.
Right.
It's like I see that happen a lot where it's, there's already, a band named that, or there's a shop named that, or
right.
Like we spoke about Home, there's Nathan's band, Home, the local band, incredible band, instrumental band, and then there's the National,
right,
which is
spelled differently. Yes. But
like is it OH,
LM, and then OM.
And then OM is the guys from Sleep.
Right. And of course Om is the mantra.
Yes.
So
but yeah, thanks for having me on the show.
Dude, thank you so much. I appreciate it, and I'm gonna look forward to coming back and maybe getting some work done. I think
would be a pleasure. I'd love that.
Definitely. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
How to Vote is a tool created by Democracy Works. It breaks down the options your state offers for casting a ballot, empowering you to decide when and where to vote. Because voting isn't always about going to the polls on Election Day anymore. Options like early voting, mail-in voting, and ballot drop boxes are more available to voters these days and growing in popularity. Democracy works best when we all vote, but misinformation and confusion about election procedures have resulted in low voter turnout. How to Vote is a tool created by Democracy Works, and it takes the guesswork out of the voting process. Some of the things you can do with How to Vote is sign up for your election reminders, see what's on your ballot, get step-by-step assistance in requesting your mail-in ballot, check for voter registration status, find your polling site, and make sure you have the appropriate identification. Decide when and where you'll vote this year at howto.vote. Are you registered to vote? Headcount is a nonpartisan organization that works with the music and entertainment industry to get our fans to vote. That also allows you to update or check your voter registration status. Go to headcount.org where you'll find all the information you need to be ready for Election Day. At HeadCount, you also can check your registration status. Millions of people purge their voter rolls every year. Everyone should check their status every year. The deadline to register to vote in some states is as early as October the 4th, so you want to check it before then. You can also request an absentee ballot, get early info on voting, and find your polling location, or see what's on your ballot. Register to vote today at headcount.org.
Musicians, rejoice! Confused with all the modern and technical pedalboard selections? Look no further. Kentucky Hot Brown Pedalboards offer their homemade wooden and custom pedalboards for guitarists and bassists alike. Established in 2013, KYHBPB has helped support not only the local Louisville scene, but a large array of big and small players from across the entire country. More info can be found at KentuckyPedalboards.com.